Thank you very much for joining us. We are very glad that you are interested to come along. And I know that some of you know me from the University of Bristol and University of Oxford, where I work on my daily basis in a capacity of lecturer, academic mentor, study skills tutor. But now we are going to have a broader perspective to look at different universities trying to apply specific tools to compare them with each other, particularly in the context of applying. So whether you are planning to apply for bachelor or apply for master studies or MBAs or even PhDs, you are very welcome to listen to this video, because we are going to share some general universal advice how you can try approach the overall quite long, complicated process of selecting universities and degrees that will match your own expectations, your own plans, your own career goals. We are also focusing very much on international studies. Each time we are holding webinars in Polish and in English, on Tuesdays in Polish, on Wednesdays in English. So we are meeting today, but we are also meeting again in 2 weeks from now. In the second seminar, we are going to tell you more about how to study. So not only how to apply for studies, but how to go through the process of studying at universities and how to study practically. So how you can turn your study experience into practical experience, into something you can promote as practical professional experiences, for example, during your applications for internships or jobs. And in the final session, in 4 weeks from now, we are going to meet again to tell you more about your application documents, your social media presence, and how to reach out to find various opportunities, internship and job opportunities. So how you can quite smoothly move from your educational space, educational experiences to start developing your professional experiences and your professional career. Therefore, I'm also cooperating with Natalia Kubko. We are both mentors and we support applicants and students applying for university degrees, but also applying for internships as well as applying for jobs after your studies or even during your studies, because we know from experiences of different people that sometimes we are approaching the graduation at our universities and we don't know what to do. We are quite unsure about our further opportunities or chances, how to secure a job just after graduation. This is where Natalia is supporting me very much, because she's focusing more on this professional perspective, whereas I'm focusing more on the academic. Natalia?
Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you so much for having me also. As you said, I'm a trainer currently and mentor, basically for young people. I collaborate with universities and foundations where I support people in their career choices, actually. I'm also an ambassador for Europass and Euro Guidance tools. Those are European tools which are promoting lifelong learning and education and professional mobility. So basically, people who wants to travel, who wants to get experience in different countries, then they order. They can have knowledge and some tips out of those tools. I also have an international experience in recruitment, including my role as an HR supervisor for a global corporation in Dubai. So basically, I'm trying to combine my business experience with academic knowledge, where I support people, as you mentioned before, when they want to enter the job market. So basically, I try to advise them how to write the proper CV, how to prepare for the interview, how to communicate with the recruiter. And nowadays, what's also important is our personal brand on social media. So around 95% of recruiters check our presence in online world. So we usually try to use LinkedIn, but I know that young people have also different platforms. But it's also important for the person who is going to hire them, what kind of content they have there and how they present themselves in virtual way. So basically, to summarize, I support young people in they planning their career choices and navigating in international job market.
Thank you very much, Natalia. And if you are interested in what Natalia is doing, once again, we are inviting you again, particularly on behalf of Natalia, to the third seminar to be held in 4 weeks from now, where she's going to focus on all this stuff around employability. As for me, again, some of you have met with me already. So my main affiliation is the University of Bristol and the University of Oxford, where I'm a lecturer, personal mentor, study skills advisor, supervisor also. But what we are doing right now with Natalia is to reach out beyond the individual universities and help people apply to a variety of universities internationally across many other countries, and to draw your attention to a variety of opportunities, to a variety of options you are currently facing, but also challenges, and to let you know, to reassure you that all these challenges are not as hard as they seem to be at first glance. And this is what we are going to tell you also right now, today, because what you are going to learn today is to apply a variety of criteria to choose not just universities and individual degree programs, but also the countries where you potentially would like to apply. It's good to know, to be aware of the pros and cons of staying in your country, or the pluses and minuses of going abroad. How we can benefit from the systems we live in, but how we can potentially reach out to learn about other systems and to learn about alternative methods of learning, of working, of doing things. This is why we are going to look at this kind of comparative perspective. The cultural differences that you can see on the slide right now is another topic that I want to highlight today. And again, it can sound very, very obvious, or we can think that cultural differences are not something that is very relevant in the European context. But still, the cultural differences mean that we may face different approaches to learning, different teaching methods, different expectations or requirements, and therefore it's good to know them. It's good to try to adapt to select a different country, for example, where we want to study and learn, and adapt that country to our own expectations, our own preferred styles of learning, of working, and to our own career goals. And finally, we are going to talk about different platforms, resources, tools that you can use when researching for various opportunities elsewhere, but also getting support, advice in the process of applying formally. So I start with kind of motivational aspects. Why would we think that we may need to internationalize our educational path and later our career path? I'm going to compare a couple of popular study destinations across Europe to share with you our 7 main selection criteria that you can use to search for and verify the quality of individual universities and individual degree programs. Finally, I want to draw your attention to some modern study options, some flexible opportunities like international degrees, multi-campus degrees, online study options, a variety of opportunities that is emerging right now. And finally, the platforms, the universities, the mentoring sessions that you can use when making your informed decisions. So starting with this kind of motivational speech, we shouldn't assume that internationalizing our universities, our academic path is always good. It should be good as long as we can make an informed decision and we know what we want to achieve actually. What's the purpose of applying internationally, or what's the purpose of applying for to top universities in our own country. So for sure, going abroad or applying to top universities in our countries can be beneficial as we can learn new working patterns or new study patterns, but study patterns are, of course, part of the working patterns. And we can, as such, broaden our mindsets, broaden our perspectives, yes? And again, we can select individual countries, as I've mentioned before, to match, to try to suit them to our own expectations. For example, if you very like critical thinking, if you want to develop your critical thinking skills, I would definitely recommend British universities because they are really good in that. Yes. If you want to learn more about teamwork, how to cooperate, how to develop group projects, the Dutch universities will be very good in that. Of course, I'm generalizing right now, but for now we have to generalize a little bit, and we are just talking about some cultural trends actually, and trends that incline toward supporting certain selected study and work patterns. So again, you can choose the destination, the country that you want to study potentially, so that the country and the cultural system, educational system of that country can be very compatible with your own expectations regarding what you are going to do, how you are going to study. Yes. The same concerns different niches or focus areas. And for example, if you are interested in volcanology, you can study in Iceland. So there is a climate issue, a genealogical context that determines the focus of some universities in Iceland to develop research on volcanology. If you want to study art, the history of arts, you can study in Italy. If you want to study international law, again, you can study at Dutch universities because Dutch universities very often, again, I'm generalizing, allow you to combine your theoretical studies on international law, yes, on the international legal framework, with opportunities to do internships across many institutions, international organizations that operate in the context of international law in The Hague, for example, in the capital city of the Netherlands. You can also decide for international studies and international education because you can be interested in kind of global perspectives. For example, you can do research for the World Health Organization because this organization allow you to meet with people who come from across different parts of the world to benefit from cumulated funding, okay, from joint projects that bring together different universities or research institutions from across the world in one place. If you are interested in astrophysics programs, for example, you can work in the United States or study in the United States because, again, you can probably find more opportunities there that combine and bring together resources from across the globe, particularly in that place, in that country. Yes. So once again, there are different cultural aspects, niches, kind of trends popular across different countries, and you can try to find your own place in the world, your own destination for your studies that will align with your own expectations. It's good to have a good plan because going international doesn't have to mean that we are doing better, that we are achieving something more. Of course, we broaden our horizons, so there are more chances that we can achieve more as a result of going international. But if we have a good plan, we can just do better. Yes, it's more likely that we achieve our own goals and expectations, meet our own expectations as a result of, for example, getting access to resources that we can't get in our own country, meet people that we can't meet in our own country. Or again, even if you go to top institutions in your own country, there are some benefits, there are some opportunities of studying at those top institutions in your own country compared with other institutions potentially. Yes, make sure you have a good plan of what would be the benefits and how you can make use, how you want to make use of studying at certain institutions, either abroad or within your own countries, so that you can maximize the potential, maximize your own potential. Here I've prepared, you will see a slide in a second, I've prepared a couple of examples from my own path, how I was trying to internationalize my experience, even when I was in a high school in my own country, in my home country, so that I had identified individual steps, short term steps, and I had tried to observe how much I can learn from undertaking these steps, okay, and observe myself and observe how those steps were beneficial, and whether I'm still going or I'm still wanting to go in the same direction. So, for example, when I was in the high school, I enjoyed learning foreign languages. I also attended international exchange programs. I visited other countries, and I was observing myself, and I was trying to answer question I was asking myself if this is what I want to do. Yes, if this is what I'm going to experience in the long term. If I like being abroad, if I like meeting other people, speaking foreign languages, if I can learn something from them so that I can say I can benefit, I can develop myself from being there, from meeting other people, from attending schools abroad, for example, etc., etc. The same concerns our university path, our academic experiences. Yes, if you go elsewhere, even if you meet people in your home country coming from different backgrounds, you can learn much from them. Not because their working practices must be better, but because their working practices, they learning styles, they learning patterns, study patterns are simply different from ours. So we have to check. We have to ask ourselves if those different patterns can be beneficial for us. If we can study, learn more effectively, because we can observe how other people learn, potentially they can learn more effectively or more quickly than we do. At the same time, of course, they can learn something from us. But this is the most relevant point, the most relevant lesson that we can draw from experiencing other cultures, other work systems, other learning patterns, etc., etc. The same concerns our professional experience. Yes, so we can observe different working patterns, different methods of cooperation, different patterns of problem solving, etc., etc., and decide if we encounter different cultures, different organizational cultures, etc., etc., then can we learn something from them? Can we develop ourselves? Can we strengthen, enhance our own potential? If so, we can then say it's worth studying abroad. It's worth working abroad, yeah, because we can develop ourselves and as such also enhance our chances that we survive, that we can be more adaptable. We can make our own career development more adaptive to the changing circumstances, particularly in the context of AI, of rapidly changing global job markets. If we learn more, if we learn different practices, we are more sure that we can then adapt ourselves to the changing circumstances in the future. So now I'm going to go through a couple of countries that are popular as study destinations for Europeans. Okay. To highlight you some examples about these cultural differences in the educational context. And then after a couple of minutes from now, I'll give you the space to ask questions. If you have any questions, you can paste the questions in the chat here. If it doesn't work or if you don't like to do that, you can send me questions on LinkedIn. I'll be trying to observe my inbox. So we start with the United Kingdom, that is prestigious, but of course expensive. And again, each time when talking about the individual countries, I'm going to highlight some pros and cons. So of course, the British system is very popular and it's known for being very for having a high reputation in global university rankings. The other benefit is that you can go for just 1 year master's in the United Kingdom compared with the most of the European countries where master degrees last usually for as long as 2 years. You can focus on essays rather than hard theoretical exams. So if you prefer to be assessed based on your individual work at home very often, where you just write down, where you do your research and write down your research papers, then you can select Great Britain. Okay. The United Kingdom is also known for very extensive individual student support that is offered to students. And I'm a good example of that. I work, as I've mentioned, as a personal tutor, study skills tutor, as well as individual mentor, which means focusing and helping students with both daily learning experience, how to prepare for assessments, for essays, etc., as well as helping them plan their careers. So I offer also career advice as part of my mentoring, and how to also develop their own learning experience in the context of making plans for the future. There are, of course, also some contrast, like very high tuition fees, particularly for students coming from outside the United Kingdom, coming from Europe now after Brexit. From non-European countries, the tuition fees are very high compared with most of the other European countries. There are high living costs, and there are slightly less flexible degree programs compared with the degree programs offered across many US or Dutch universities, for example. As regards the Netherlands, this is becoming the most or one of the most popular destinations for Europeans who come from the continent, who had preferred studies in the United Kingdom, but after Brexit, those studies have become more too expensive. Yes, so you can study at Dutch universities in English, which is, of course, what you would do in the United Kingdom, but for much lower fees. The other advantage of the Dutch studies is that you can quite easily choose between theoretical and practical programs. You can do it everywhere, actually, but the Dutch universities are known for the distinction between universities of applied sciences that are very practical or empirically oriented, and the universities that are more theoretical and focus more on sharing with you research skills and prepare you for working either at universities or research organizations or in related fields and areas. There is a quite high ratio of international students at UG level, which is not always the case at British universities, something you can be aware of. But as regards the contrast, there is a shortage of student accommodation. It's quite hard for students, and I hear about this problem from really many students who have just secured a study position in the Netherlands. It's very hard for them to get accommodation. You still may be required to speak Dutch when you work, if you want to work outside of academia, particularly in administration or marketing or sales. And there are more classes on campus with compulsory attendance, more contact hours on campus compared with the number of contact hours required at British universities. As regards Germany, there are formally no tuition fees at public universities. I'm not thinking about private universities right now, of course. There are only very low administrative fees that you have to pay. German universities are quite well known for their reputation in engineering and tech subjects and degree programs. There are close partnerships developed between some universities and industry and companies, which means very often that internships are an integral part of the curricula. the student the study curricula. So you are guaranteed, not always, but quite often compared with the other countries that I'm talking about, you may be guaranteed an internship placement during your studies or just after your graduation from some German universities. On the other hand, you have much less essays, much less individual coursework to be done, to be completed at home. And you have to pass theoretical exams where your memory is being tested. Yes, there are generally fewer English programs at undergrad level. Still, there are some, and the number of English taught programs is increasing from year to year. But still, it's more likely for you to find a English program taught at postgrad level rather than at undergraduate level. And there is, particularly at public universities again, and there is a huge culture of bureaucracy, which means you have to deal with many formalities compared again with Great Britain or France or Italy and many other countries. It's not a huge issue, but again, it's something you have to be aware of where you are, if you are considering applying to German universities. And the fourth destination that I want to highlight right now is France. Again, a very popular destination also for British students, for German, Polish, etc. students. There are a couple of prestigious universities, so-called Grand École, in business, in diplomacy, and in arts in particular. There are, similarly to Germany, internships that are very often integrated into study curricula. Tuition fees are again very low for EU students, and they are regulated by the French government. It's the same in Germany, where the fees are regulated by the German government. The fees for at public universities in Germany. And there is, of course, a quite rich student life, cultural life offered, particularly in Paris, with many events, exhibitions. So I know students studying arts, for example, in Paris, and they are amazed by a number of options available for them in terms of their development outside of the campuses. But again, compared with Germany, or similarly to Germany, the French system of assessing students is very old school. They focus much on exams, on memorization. There is a language barrier. There are some English programs offered, particularly at private universities, but to be honest, it's quite hard to live in France without knowing French. And there is a variation in quality sometimes between larger and smaller cities when it comes to education. Okay, very often I'm aware. I hear from French students who say that some smaller universities underinvested compared with the larger universities in larger cities, which isn't the case, for example, in the UK. Again, I'm generalizing things right now, but we need to remember that some so-called weaker universities in smaller cities can be less internationalized and underinvested. And there are quite high living costs, but particularly in Paris, when it comes to other cities, it depends, but very often we can expect lower living costs in smaller cities compared with the high living costs across many British cities, particularly in the southern part of the country. Now it's a short time for Q&A. If you have any questions in the meantime.
Maybe just one, because as far as I speak with students, very often, Polish students especially, we very often have our low self-esteem when it comes to knowing English or any other language. And we don't feel very confident when we speak, and especially when it comes to work in different language or studying in different language. When it comes to myself, it's like I was able to work in Dubai for around 5 years and using English. But still, when I think studying in English, I believe that I wouldn't be able to do it because I have an assumption that academic English language, it's so hard and sometimes not understandable for me, and it would be hard to take a benefit out of the studies. So like when half of the things are not understandable, and maybe I cannot speak myself, I mean, present myself in a proper way, or when it comes to the teamwork with other people who know this language better, I just want to ask you, or like wonder together, like, do you have that kind of questions from your students when it comes to language barrier, or like,
Yeah.
is it that hard how I think it is?
Not at all. So the question is very important, of course, particularly for non-British students or students who aren't native in English and they consider studying in England or at English taught programs, and they are very much concerned about their proficiency in English. And I would say it's not an issue, and there is a paradox behind it, I think, because from my experience, I think that educational language or language that is present at universities is not as hard as the spoken language that we encounter on the high street when we go to restaurants, pubs, etc., etc. Yes, so I think, of course, um, mm, it's more an issue that we are verified for our knowledge, hard knowledge, expertise, etc., etc. So we're not just talking about the weather when attending courses at university, but the language is quite official, I would say. It's not the spoken language, okay? The role of dialects or accents is not as important as it might be, so we shouldn't be afraid of being unable to understand someone because the people can speak very different dialects and accents. It's not the case, or not as much as it could be at universities. Maybe because universities are very cosmopolitan, because the people there who work there, who study there, come from across different places, even from across England. Yes, when we meet students who are mostly British, but their language, their accent is quite unified in my perception, at least, because they come from different places and they have to understand each other. They have to be understood by their teachers and vice versa. And the same concerns, of course, foreign students. They come from different backgrounds. They use different accents. So we know that the language is kind of simplified, okay? Or unified. The way we speak is quite unified because we have to communicate across barriers and regardless of different accents and dialects we are used to. So that's the benefit, of course, and this is the paradox I've mentioned at the beginning. I think it's easier to communicate in English in academia rather than in the high street, okay? When we meet people in restaurants, etc. So this is a very, very interesting question and very important for us. It's very important for us to reassure the people who are considering studies in English and they are not native in English that it's not as hard as they very often think it is.
Thank you so much. And actually, what I want to add is like, with every year, the English become better, right? So the
Yeah, of course.
hardest part is to start. And what you mentioned also, probably yesterday, is like a lot of universities has like language courses, right?
Yes, and we
So we
also
can
support
enter it.
students. We also support students applying for language courses if they like, because as part of the pre-university courses that are optional or mandatory for some of students, they also offer language courses, and these courses are very much focused on the academic language. So there are opportunities for the students, and even if you don't have to attend the pre-university courses, still very often you have an opportunity to attend free classes in English. Even if you come to like England, for example, in early September, and if you are going to start your university degree, your first university courses in the end of September, you have a couple of weeks when you can attend your English courses to to feel better simply before starting your degree in that
That's
language.
great. Thank you.
Yeah, so we can continue, and the third section is probably the longest one, but I'm trying to be short. As we said, we've identified with Natalia at least 7 main criteria that you can use to make an informed decision about your education, whether it's a bachelor's degree or master's degree or MBA or PhD. There are different criteria. And the thing is that most of them are not very easy to access or to verify, but we can help you individually with checking and verifying the quality of the courses you are applying to. Because, of course, we very often like to look at the global rankings like US, Shanghai ranking, Times Higher Education, and I don't want to underappreciate the huge amount of work, research work that is invested into these rankings. And they are very relevant, of course, but they tell us much about statistical data. Okay, to give you one example, the rankings tell us about the ratio between students, the numbers of students, and the numbers of teaching staff within individual universities or departments at the universities. So, if there are, for example, approximately 10 students assigned or per like one staff member at a university or department, it can mean, of course, that the teachers have much time for us to spend with us individually, yes, because they don't have many students to deal with. But the rankings don't tell us still if, for example, personal tutoring or personal mentoring are always part of the contractual obligations of the contractual work of that teaching staff. Yes, they may be busy, they may be involved in research, in other administrative activities. So the statistical data are a very good starting point. I encourage you to look at the rankings, but we want to know more about the individual, very often subjective experience and what you can actually expect from the individual programs, how much they can meet your own expectations in the context of your own career goals. Yes. So we've identified 7 criteria. These aren't individual criteria. These are rather sets of questions you can ask yourselves when taking your decision. It's about the structure of the program. It's about flexibility of the program. It's about personalization of the program. It's about whether universities and the program support you in gaining work experience. It's about access to technology, innovation, development of soft skills, and about individual student support that I've already mentioned. So when it comes to the study program structure, it means the teaching methods that vary across universities and countries, of course, and requirements for students. So you can see on the slide a couple of questions you can ask yourselves in the context of this particular criteria about the study program structure. So particularly if the program that you are applying to does offer the type of classes you prefer. Yes, as I've mentioned, Dutch universities, British universities focus on learning by doing, on individual work, on cooperation in groups, on small classes, on small seminars, rather than traditional lectures in large lecture theaters, for example. In turn, German and French universities more often, more frequently require us to attend regularly large classes, large lectures that are less interactive, that are more theoretical very often. Yes. You can also check whether the attendance at classes is mandatory or not, and what are the consequences of missing your classes during your studies. So again, very often lectures aren't mandatory, but seminars or other small group classes are mandatory. And for example, in across most of the British universities, there are 2 to 3 seminar absences or workshops absences allowed per one term or one semester, and the number of the absences is regulated by the school. or the department. Yes, if the number of absences is exceeded, if you are missing your classes too frequently, usually you have to do an additional assignment. You have to do another paperwork, for example. I mean, research, you have to write another research paper to complete the course. But for most of the European countries, continental countries, teacher may set their own rules. It's not always the case, of course, but very often it is. And frequent absences can lead to retaking the course, which almost never happens at British universities. So these are the differences, the practical differences that aren't often recognized or taken into account by the popular rankings, but they are very relevant for us, for our practical daily experience. And again, as I've mentioned, what does the student assessment structure look like? If you prefer hard theoretical exams that test your memory, or if you prefer individual homework as part of your assignments, how will you be assessed? How stressful this will be? How easy this will be for you? These are the questions that you can ask yourselves again and try to verify when getting some information from the universities and individual departments before you decide to apply to them. Okay, so these are some of the questions. As regards the flexibility of the program you are applying to, you can also check whether you can potentially or you will be allowed potentially to change your specialization during your studies. Okay, whether you are required to choose your specialization at the beginning of your study, in the first year of your study, or after the first year, or after the second year, yes, even during the third year of your bachelor's program. It depends. But if you aren't decided what you want to study specifically, yes, you can choose a more general course, like business, for example. And then after 1 or 2 years of your study, you can decide you're gonna change. You're gonna select, for example, digital marketing as your specialization. So at which stage of your educational experience you will be required to narrow down your path. This is important, particularly for those of you who aren't decided and want to start with more general path, with a broader study path before you take decision regarding your specialization. There are also some double majors available. You can add smaller specialization, so-called minor, which is popular, for example, across Dutch universities. You can combine two different subject areas or degree programs even, like computer science plus business or psychology plus neuroscience, which is popular in the United States, in Canada, to some extent across Dutch and German universities too. If you can finally transfer to another program, at least at your own university, within the same university, without losing your results or your ECTS points, what are the conditions of such a transfer? Yes, if you have to repeat a year or just complete 1 or 2 additional courses to be allowed to transfer to another program. Much depends on the similarity of the programs you are moving between, of course, but much may also depend on the culture of bureaucracy, on the cultural differences between countries, but also the organizational regulations, patterns between individual universities. You can also try to personalize your study path as much as it is allowed by your target university. So, for example, you can potentially take a gap year, which is quite popular in Poland, for example, or it was a couple of years ago at some British and Dutch universities too. You can take a placement year, which is something different, because within the placement year, you can have a year off for an internship. You can get a paid job, actually, which is part of your curriculum, okay? And then you can return to your education, staying within the same degree program without losing anything, just taking more time for gaining professional experience as part of your study, actually. This is one of the very interesting opportunities offered by some universities. And if you can study online or in a hybrid mode, blended learning, so-called blended learning that allows you to choose which of the subjects or lectures or seminars you want to attend online, or which of them you want to attend in person. Of course, this flexibility is is offered mainly at private universities, but also when it comes to the increasing competition between the universities, some of the public universities are also starting to offer some flexibility, some options to choose between online and in-person classes for their students. And something we've already mentioned, so how far your university and your degree program can support you in gaining work experience, professional experience. Particularly, what I do like to emphasize is whether, as I've mentioned, the internships are an integral part of your curriculum, of your study program. Because if it is, it usually means that universities are actively involved, engaged in supporting you in finding an internship. Okay? Or they may have developed so-called preferential partnerships between the universities or your department and businesses in certain industry sectors that are relevant for you. Again, if this is the case, your chances to get an internship, a paid internship very often, are much higher than the chances of the students who aren't in the same program where this kind of preferential partnership is offered and available to you as the student. Yes? So university can be a springboard for you, can allow you to secure not just internship, but as a result of attending an internship, very often you can be even secured a permanent job in the same company just after your graduation. This is what is offered by some universities, and it's worth checking if you are interested in this kind of support, whether your target university or specifically your target department or degree program does offer you this kind of chance. Access to technology and innovation is another criteria that can be relevant, particularly for tech students. Yes, there are at almost all universities research centers, but very often they are open only for PhD students. The question is if your learning experience will also benefit from having the opportunity to visit the research centers. If some teaching classes take part within the research centers, for example, in laboratories, if you study physics or biology or chemistry, whatever, yes, how far the research activities of your target university, of your target departments are engaged in supporting teaching directly, also at bachelor or master's level, and not only at PhD level, which is often the case. If there are any support programs for students who are running their own businesses or who are considering to start running their businesses, like startup incubators, mentoring programs, or even investment schemes that may be offered to students. Okay, and finally, you can think that some universities are expensive, that the tuition fees are high, but actually it may be beneficial to pay them if, in return, these universities offer you opportunities to attend external courses, like in Coursera, edX, FutureLearn platforms, and many others. Some of those courses, as you know, are very expensive, but they can be offered for you for free or for discounts if you are a university member or university student. So even if you pay the high fees, you can be offered discounts or free courses that are normally expensive, and this can be also beneficial for you. There are also things like virtual laboratories, AI-based systems to personalize learning processes, learning experience, developing of your study skills, educational gamifications like in medicine, in business. So these are many modern technologically advanced opportunities and spaces that can be offered by some universities and schools, it's worth checking them. Soft skills development support is another point. I'm going to focus on this particular point in much more detail in the next session, how to develop your universal skills, career relevant skills as part of your studies, during your studies, even in the context of your usual assessments, yes, assignments. But this is what you can also check if there are support options, if, for example, there are courses or workshops on public speaking, on leadership, on negotiation, on conflict management that are offered by universities. Again, very often for free. You can take part in them just because you are a student of your university. How much also the classes, the regular daily, weekly classes you are attending also support you in developing your universal skills. So not just the hard knowledge, not just the expertise in your own area, like physics, maths, politics, economics, whatever, but also the universal skills that will be for sure relevant regardless of what's your further career path. Yes, like communication, like empathy, like ability to adapt oneself to changing circumstances, like critical thinking, analytical thinking, verifying the reliability of sources, etc., etc. All these things have to be developed because if we want to be competitive in the job market of the future, we have to learn these skills. And this is what I'm going to tell you more about in 2 weeks from now. And finally, the individual student support. I have already mentioned today that British universities, to some extent also American universities, are very good in that, yes? But it's worth checking if you are applying to any university across different countries. If, for example, they distinguish, even if you look at the resources available at their websites, information about degree programs that is made available publicly on their websites, if they distinguish between the roles of personal mentor, personal tutor, career advisor, well-being service staff, etc., etc. Because if they distinguish between these roles, if they offer these roles separately, okay, so to say, so there are staff members who are personal mentors, there are staff members who are personal tutors, it may mean that they are very good in that, okay, that they know what are the benefits of personal mentoring, what are the benefits of personal tutoring, etc., etc. These benefits differ from each other. It's good to know that. For example, if you are assigned a personal mentor, you can expect from them that they will help you to develop your career awareness. Okay, you can shape your study in a way that will help you prepare better for the job market after graduation. But if you are assigned a personal tutor, you may more expect from them more regular support in your daily learning experience, in being prepared, in getting prepared for assignments, for exams, for essays. Again, I'm slightly generalizing right now. We can talk about it more individually, in more detail, but this is what's relevant to remember. There are different perspectives from which you can expect support, different areas within which you can expect support from university staff members. And the more diversified this support is offered at your universities, the more likely you get very holistic support, very holistic assistance from your university, and you won't have to pay, for example, externally for personal mentoring, so that you get this support from within the universities. Again, do you have any questions about what I've been just talking about, or we can move forward? If there are any questions, I'm again looking at my LinkedIn. If there are any questions, I can see one question on LinkedIn actually. It's a question about how we can verify, for example, whether research projects and other stuff is being secured or offered, or how far Can we verify that funding is secured for research activities we want to undertake? So it's very individual. Yes, it depends on the universities whether they publish such information. All of these criteria that I've been talking about right now need to be verified individually by us. We can assist you in this verification, of course, but most of them will not be publicly visible. Very often you have to reach out directly to the universities, to the admin staff, to ask them questions. Okay, it's totally fine for you to ask questions because of course the information that you can get from brochures, from prospects of the universities and the departments are quite general. Yes, they aren't very detailed. So therefore, it's good to reach out to them. And it's also part of a good strategy. Strategy we'll be talking about next time, but strategy that will present you as a person who is very motivated, who asks questions, who is proactive in getting information, in verifying the quality of the universities or departments in the process of applying there. So it's something that is very positive, okay? You can promote yourselves as a very proactive applicant, as a very aware applicant who wants to know as much as possible about the study where you apply. So it's worth asking questions. We can also help in that because this is what allows you to make as much as informed decision as possible. And this, of course, complies with what I said at the beginning. If you take an informed decision, you can just get the most of the university and the program you are applying to. Okay, we can, because we don't have much time left, so we can now go through some interesting flexible study options as something that is not as popular as the traditional study options that you can hear about everywhere. Yes, of course, there are, again, a couple of questions you can ask yourselves. Whether you want to study a single or joint degree, whether you want to study at private university or public university, whether you want to study on one campus or maybe apply for multi-campus programs, online or in person. Maybe you want to earn a American or British degree from Europe, from the continent, or from Asia. So there are some options that aren't as popular as they should be, maybe, or some of them did not exist at all a couple of years ago. Also, as part of our mentoring experience, Natalia and I are still learning these new study options, and it's worth knowing them because they can offer you something that you may find very relevant for you. Again, it's a question about your own goals, your own expectations, about the fit between the programs and your own work patterns and study patterns. Yes, one of the examples I want to draw your attention to is the opportunity to earn a UK or US diploma from Dubai, which is quite attractive for a couple of reasons. It's not good for everyone, of course, yes, but it's something you can take into consideration because you can study outside of the UK or the US and earn the British or UK or American degree, the very same degree, the exact same degree as the people who study in New York or London or Birmingham. You can even learn from the same lecturers because the lecturers very often rotate between the campuses, for example, in Birmingham and in Dubai. You can study the same degree, exactly the same subjects. You can learn from the same teachers, but for much lower tuition fees very often and paying much lower living costs than you have to pay in London or Birmingham, for example. And you can study in a rich and very sunny city, which can sound attractive, particularly from those of us who live in the UK. One of the examples of that is the University of Birmingham, the top 100 world university that has a campus in Dubai. And again, you can study in Dubai, not in Birmingham, and you can earn exactly the same degree. Once again, we can also help you like verify the quality, decide whether this is a good match for you, whether it will allow you, studies will allow you to meet your own expectations and fulfill your own goals. We can assist you hand in your application process if you like. Another example are the British studies on Malta, which can be attractive for those of you who come from Europe. After Brexit, we know it's getting more and more difficult to get to the UK, to get student visa, not to mention work visa in the UK, but you can still study in a British system. You can earn a British degree, a British diploma, whereas staying in the EU without having to like go through all the formalities and get visa, study or work visa. If you are from the EU, you can study in a British system, earn a British diploma. Also, there are even American universities offering American diplomas in Malta, so in the European Union. This is another example which is interesting. The example I personally like very much is the university, the Schiller University, the American University. And again, you have to decide on your own because, of course, there are more popular universities like Harvard. So if you want to get a diploma from a university that is one of the most popular universities, one of the most prestigious universities at global rankings, you can, for example, choose Harvard or Yale or UCL in London, etc., etc. But there are also alternative options that are slightly less popular, but still Schiller University, for example, is well known. And at the same time, these slightly less popular universities can offer much more flexible options, yes, which can be attractive. So the Schiller University offers you an opportunity at bachelor's level, for example, to study for 4 years because American bachelor studies last for 4 years. And every year you can study in a different country. You can study in Germany, in Heidelberg. You can study in France, in Paris, in Madrid, the capital of Spain, and in Florida, in the US. You can study in Germany for 2 or 3 years, and then the last year in France. Or you can study all 4 years in one place. It's totally up to you. What I'm going to say to you is that the university has 4 campuses spread across all these 4 countries, and you can just decide where, in which country, and for how long you want to study. Again, you study exactly the same program, exactly the same subjects from the same teachers who rotate between the campuses, okay? And you can get language courses in those countries for free. Of course, you have to pay the tuition, yes, but you don't have to pay anything extra for your language courses. So, for example, you come from the UK, you study in France, you can learn French. Schiller University, of course, offers master's programs. These are shorter. But again, you can choose at which campus you want to study. I think it's a very flexible, one of the most flexible options we can currently find. It's not only about the Schiller University. There are some other universities, but not many of them who can offer flexible study options. Again, any questions? And I'm looking at Natalia and at my inbox.
Just one,
Messages.
Patrick, from me.
Mhm.
It seems like all those questions and criteria which you mentioned, when it comes to myself, and I think when I try to answer those questions, especially when I was young and I was trying to decide about my next studies steps and future goals, it would be so hard for me to answer those questions in a proper way, to plan my career and education path. And I think about those people, young people, who I think also struggle with the decision, especially in a young age. And my question to you is like, is there any possibility to choose the, for example, more general major program and later on focus on the narrow specializations, or like, you mentioned already about some flexibility, but I think about those people who aren't that sure about the future decisions. Is there some way for them to choose still international education, but not that much specialized?
Yes, it's a very good question. As you've noted, we've already mentioned on that there are some opportunities. But what I want to emphasize right now is that many students and applicants whom we currently cooperate with decide to choose programs from within broadly understood social science subjects and programs. Yes, because if you decide to study politics or economics or sociology, or degree programs that even offer a mixture of all these subjects like politics, sociology, economics, philosophy, etc., they allow those students to decide later. So the thing is that they aren't prepared for a very particular profession in the future after graduating from these interdisciplinary programs. But on the other hand, they are quite broadly oriented. Yes, they get a very broad knowledge how to operate, how to function in a society, in business environments, how to understand politics, economics, geopolitics, etc. So they are well prepared to take a decision later when it comes to choosing a more narrow path and to decide what kind of profession they want to do more specifically in the future. So there are again pros and cons of choosing quite interdisciplinary programs, but I know that particularly within the social sciences, these interdisciplinary programs are offered. And again, the number of these interdisciplinary degrees, combining, for example, politics with sociology, with philosophy, with economics, is increasing in different countries. Yes, not just in the UK or US, but also in the countries that were or have historically been rather old school and they have historically focused on promoting more specific, narrowed educational pathways. Now they are increasingly open towards offering more interdisciplinary courses. In the hard sciences, like physics or chemistry, particularly medicine, for example, it's of course more difficult to be as interdisciplinary from the beginning, from the first years of bachelor's. For the social sciences, it's more possible. And I know from my experience as a mentor supporting students applying to different universities at different levels, they are very often interested in applying to such very interdisciplinary degrees at the beginning.
Thank you. Actually, that's good because as far as I read in the research, when it comes to job market, it seems like we are going to switch our careers a couple of times in our lives, and it's good to have different approaches and different knowledge because there's a lot of also burnout. There's a lot of like other career chances and opportunities. So it's good. Actually, it's good now to have a broadened perspective.
Yes, and if you study so interdisciplinarily, yes, you are better prepared for adaptability, for being adaptive to the changing circumstances. This is part of, again, the soft skills that we are going to tell you about in 2 weeks from now. But being able to change the career pathway in the future is one of the main assets we are expected to showcase to our recruiters or employers. And therefore, interdisciplinarity, our experience, student experience as from studying interdisciplinary degrees can be one of the examples where we can showcase this readiness for being adaptive to the changing circumstances in the job market. Okay, let's move to the final part before we finish in a couple of minutes. So, as we know already that there is an increasing variety of options that is offered to us. There is also an increasing variety of support options, not only study options, degree options, but also support options and support programs. For example, during the process of applying for degrees, but also for applying for internships and job in the future, postgrad job. So you can apply individually, which is the most traditional method. At least at the very beginning, it's worth looking around and trying to think what we would potentially like in terms of degree options and universities and countries where we would like to potentially study. But of course, we have to find all the required information on our own. If we are interested to get as much information as possible in the context of all these criteria we've been talking about right now, it's of course time consuming and difficult. But on the other hand, we are responsible. We take responsibility. We know what to do. We aren't we don't have to like expect the others or wait for the others to do the job for us. But there are also centralized recruitment platforms that can speed up the process. We are still responsible for the process of gathering information, of verifying information about different courses, yes, but the recruitment platforms work as kind of information hubs. Yes, they combine, they bring together information from across different universities and programs. They can also offer searchable databases, so we can search for different programs using different um, keywords and issues like what are the fees, what are the deadlines. We can just do the search more quickly without having to reach out to every single university and degree program separately. We can also apply usually to 3 to 5 universities, maximum 5 universities in most cases, through one platform. Yes, so this simplifies the process, this speeds up the process, particularly in terms of what I've said, trying to compare a couple of universities together using certain keywords. We can also rely on help from individual mentors, and the individual mentors who are becoming quite popular, I would say. They offer their own advice, their own experience, as they are very often students of the universities that we are interested in. And this is very beneficial, yes, because we do not have to only read about something that is publicly available by the universities alone. We can learn from the individual personal experience of the people who have already applied successfully and study at the universities. Yes. They can also offer advice, writing CV, other application documents. They can share further experience with us. But there are also institutional mentors like Natalia and myself who cooperate with a number of students who share their own experience, hands-on experience, as well as with a number of recruitment platforms. Because again, you can reach out to 1 or 2 recruitment platforms, application platforms, and as I've said, they serve as information hubs for us. But we can also compare the platforms, not just the universities within the individual platforms, but we can compare the platforms against each other for their quality, for the amount of information they offer, for the training they offer. And also, as we pay subscriptions to these platforms, we can offer more than you can be offered by these platforms. You don't have to pay subscriptions individually for every single platform to get access to exclusive training, to internal databases of those platforms, for example. You can reach out to us and get the access. And this is how we can combine sources at multiple levels. Okay, so advice from students who currently study at certain universities, resources of the platforms, more platforms, not just 1 or 2, and our own experience, of course, as students, as mentors, as lecturers at some universities. We also, and these institutional mentors, more generally speaking, also work with or are employed by universities, like in my case, work with or cooperate with NGOs, companies, think tanks, research institutes, etc., etc. As such, we participate in graduate schemes, in internship programs, so we can help you apply to those programs if you are interested. Again, this is kind of additional source of support that can be offered to you. And again, what's the main lesson from that is that with the increasing number of study opportunities, we also need to be aware of the increasing support potential that we can benefit from, and this is what we can offer to you as well. Any final questions? Again, I'm looking at Natalia at my LinkedIn profile. We can slowly finish for now, but once again, don't forget about the 2 other seminars that we are offering in 2 weeks from now and in 4 weeks from now. In 2 weeks from now, again on Wednesday at the same time, 5 p.m. UK time, 6 p.m. Central European time. We are going to talk about transferable skills. So how to study practically, how to develop career-relevant competencies and skills during your studies, and how to promote them in your applications for internships and jobs. And in the third webinar, the final session in this series, in 4 weeks from now, we are going to tell more about how to reach out to the job market, how to search for more proactively for jobs, for hidden opportunities very often, and Natalia will be sharing her insights from there, from her perspective. So thank you very much for today. Thank you, Natalia, for being with us. Thank you, everyone, and see you in 2 weeks, hopefully.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.